The world does not bow to kindness. Respect is not earned through goodwill, nor is it demanded by outcry. It is seized in silence, observed in the architecture of power, and enforced in the subtle manipulations of perception. Those who fail to grant it are not merely rude, they are predators testing the limits of your boundaries, searching for weakness, sniffing for the fractures in your identity. To face them without strategy is to invite erosion of your ego, erosion of your authority, erosion of your very presence. And yet, the majority succumb, reacting instinctively: anger, pleading, confrontation, all gestures that signal vulnerability. Power is never shared willingly. Respect, a currency of the human mind, is offered only when one perceives dominance or the threat of its subtle yet immutable presence. Every slight, every dismissal, every glance that passes as trivial is a psychological probe. It measures your response, calibrates your value, tests your composure. Those who understand this see the world as it is, not as a place for justice, but as a landscape of perception, hierarchy, and influence. To handle disrespect, then, is to master the architecture of the mind that judges, the mind that underestimates, the mind that assumes superiority. Imagine the mind as a battlefield. Every interaction is a maneuver, every word a weapon, every silence a shield. Those who disrespect you believe they hold the initiative. They imagine you are reactive, pliable, constrained by conscience. But power is the quiet accumulation of control. It is the absence of impulsive action, the invisible dominance that reshapes perception without a sound. In this arena, your first ally is silence. Not the polite pause, but the calculated absence that forces others to project their insecurities onto you. When they speak over you, interrupt you, disregard you, they reveal not power, they reveal fear, envy, and inadequacy. Your response, or your lack of it, is the first strike in a psychological campaign. To navigate those who disrespect is to recognize the subtle economy of value. Every exchange costs emotional capital. Every response expends energy that the weak cannot replenish. Those who understand this will act with precision. They will not plead for respect, nor will they attempt to frighten through overt dominance. They manipulate perception, they control the narrative silently, they allow ego to collapse under the weight of their restraint. In essence, handling disrespect is less about them and entirely about the internal architecture of your own authority. Control begins with observation. Before retaliation, before instruction, before assertion, there must be awareness of motives, of weakness, of the intricate patterns of human behavior that dictate how power is distributed and recognized. Respect is not a right, it is an extraction. And extraction is a process, an orchestration of visibility, absence, and consequence. Those who disrespect will reveal themselves repeatedly, predictably, if you possess the patience to watch. Their arrogance is a resource, their dismissiveness a tool. The mind that wields these observations shapes reality. The mind that reacts becomes a footnote. Here, then, is the first law of handling disrespect: measure before movement. Every slight is data, every insult a probe, every challenge a psychological blueprint. Once mapped, the strategies emerge naturally: the subtle recalibration of boundaries, the silent assertion of dominance, the precise application of consequence that leaves no room for misinterpretation. The human ego is fragile. Those who fail to respect you will test it endlessly, unaware that fragility is your weapon, patience your armor, and perception your battlefield. By the time they realize the nature of your strategy, it is already too late. The illusion of their superiority, carefully cultivated, begins to fracture. Each attempt to provoke, to belittle, to dismiss is met with a measured absence, a controlled shift in the power landscape, a subtle recalibration that enforces the reality they refuse to acknowledge. Respect is not demanded, it is silently exacted. And in this quiet mastery, you find the paradox of human behavior. Those who seek to diminish you will do so out of fear. Those who assume dominance will crumble under your composure. To handle disrespect is to control not only the external environment, but the internal economy of emotion. It is to transform every insult, every snub, every act of disregard into a strategic advantage. This is the first step in the architecture of power, a psychological blueprint that will unfold across the next 6 stages, each designed to dissect, neutralize, and ultimately dominate those who presume they can walk over you. The battlefield has been laid, the probes have begun, the architecture of control awaits, and those who do not respect you are already unwitting participants in a campaign they cannot comprehend. The first act of mastery begins not with confrontation, but with observation. Those who disrespect you operate under the illusion that impulsivity defines power, that loudness masks weakness, that aggression signals authority. They are predictable because they are ruled by ego, blind to the subtle architecture of perception. To face them effectively, you must first map the terrain of their mind, the patterns of provocation, the triggers of arrogance, the cyclical rituals of dominance and belittlement. Every glance, every word, every hesitated pause is data. The human mind is a machine of repetition. Those who fail to respect you will reveal themselves in predictable rhythms. Silence becomes your lens. You watch without interference, noting the ways in which their arrogance seeks validation. A slight, intended to provoke, becomes a blueprint of insecurity. A dismissive tone, a mocking gesture, a subtle undermining, all are not attacks, but invitations. Invitations to understand the precise mechanism by which their ego operates. Those who underestimate the value of observation are blind architects of their own downfall. They miscalculate, mistaking action for power, misreading restraint as weakness. Patience is the hidden weapon. While they speak, you catalogue. While they attempt to dominate, you analyze. The mind that reacts is consumed by emotion. The mind that observes becomes a strategist. Each micro-interaction becomes a field of influence. Each provocation a test that they will fail if you remain calm. By the time you act, the architecture is complete. You know their patterns, their weaknesses, and their insecurities. You have transformed every attempt at disrespect into intelligence, every act of arrogance into insight. Machiavelli wrote that men are governed by perception rather than truth. Here, it is literal. Respect is granted to those whose minds project authority, not to those who demand it. By observing, you construct a psychological map upon which all future maneuvers will rely. You see their fear hidden beneath bravado, their envy beneath contempt, their limitations beneath confidence. And from this map, the next stage will emerge: the quiet, unassailable assertion of boundaries that they cannot perceive until it is too late. Observation alone does not command respect. It merely prepares the battlefield. The second stage is the deliberate establishment of boundaries, subtle yet unyielding. Those who disrespect you test limits constantly, probing for weakness, measuring patience, calculating the cost of your reaction. To concede, even slightly, is to surrender authority. To react impulsively is to reveal vulnerability. True control manifests not in visible confrontation, but in the invisible recalibration of perception, the quiet assertion that some lines are untouchable, and that any attempt to cross them will exact consequence, whether immediate or deferred. Boundaries are psychological weapons. They do not shout, they constrain. They do not intimidate overtly. They realign the mind of the aggressor to the truth they refuse to see. A firm refusal, a controlled withdrawal, a measured silence. Each is an invisible wall that forces the disrespectful to confront their own limitations. In their arrogance, they expect pliancy, yet they encounter immovable architecture. Every repeated slight met with strategic absence fractures confidence, recalibrates expectation, and plants doubt where entitlement once thrived. This is a dance of control. Your actions, or non-actions, must be precise. To overextend is to betray intent. To underperform is to concede leverage. Those who disrespect you measure power in visible dominance, yet true influence is built in invisible restraint. By asserting boundaries calmly, consistently, and without excess, you communicate a reality beyond argument. Respect is not granted freely, and intrusion has cost. The ego that assumed superiority now encounters resistance that it cannot rationalize or ignore. Strategic boundaries reshape perception. The aggressor, accustomed to testing limits, now experiences hesitation, second guessing, and subtle fear. They miscalculate, overcompensate, or retreat entirely, revealing the architecture of their insecurity. And in this silence, you do more than enforce limits. You teach a lesson in psychological economy, that every act has consequence, that every breach is noted, and that true authority does not demand recognition, but commands it invisibly. The mind that masters boundaries prepares for the next stage, the transformation of their attempts to diminish you into tools for your own dominance. Every insult becomes an insight, every provocation a mirror, every challenge a lever to shift perception irreversibly in your favor. Disrespect seeks to provoke, to fracture composure, to elicit reaction. It thrives on the chaos of unrestrained emotion, feeding on the flickers of anger, indignation, or humiliation. To respond unconsciously is to surrender. The third stage demands mastery over the most volatile battlefield, your own mind. Emotional economy is not suppression, it is strategic allocation. Every feeling is measured, every impulse filtered through the lens of control. The goal is not to deny the existence of emotion, but to ensure it never dictates action. In this architecture, silence becomes a weapon as potent as any visible strike. A controlled pause, a calm gaze, an unshaken demeanor, these convey authority more powerfully than any verbal confrontation. Those who disrespect you, accustomed to triggering volatility, encounter instead an unassailable reserve. Their power, which relied on your reaction, collapses against the steel of composure. Their ego, built on assumptions of superiority, begins to fracture when no provocation yields the expected surrender. Machiavelli understood that men are driven by perception rather than truth. By controlling the outward expression of emotion, you manipulate their perception of power. Every measured response, or absence of response, becomes a signal you are neither prey nor competitor in the ordinary sense. You are a force defined by discipline, an invisible authority whose dominance does not require validation. Emotional restraint converts their aggression into insight. Each attempt to diminish you is now data, each insult a tool, each challenge a lever to consolidate your position. This stage is the crucible of psychological resilience. The mind that once recoiled from disrespect learns to convert irritation into strategy, provocation into observation, and conflict into control. You discover the hidden calculus of human weakness, that those who lash out are, in truth, driven by need, envy, and fear. And those who assume they can destabilize you are merely revealing the patterns you will exploit in the stages to follow. The economy of emotion is not a defensive posture, it is offensive architecture. Through controlled response, you assert dominance not through confrontation, but through the quiet, undeniable authority of a mind unshaken. And once this economy is mastered, the next stage emerges naturally, the deliberate manipulation of perception to make their disrespect inconsequential, even self-defeating. Those who disrespect you operate within a narrow field of perception. They assume reality is shared, that the world is defined by their assumptions, that your silence or patience signals weakness. The fourth stage transforms this misperception into your weapon. By controlling the narrative of interaction, you shift the locus of power from their actions to your calculated interpretation of them. Influence resides not in reaction, but in shaping what others believe is real. Every insult, every challenge, every dismissal becomes a tool to realign perception and fracture their assumed authority. Psychological leverage is born in subtlety. A slight withdrawal, a deliberate delay, a measured acknowledgement, these are not concessions, but instruments of influence. Those who disrespect you are accustomed to controlling the dynamics of exchange. When their expectations are subverted, even marginally, their minds begin to unravel. They overcompensate, doubt themselves, question motives, and reveal the fissures in their own ego. In this space, the power you exert is invisible yet absolute. They perceive not your dominance overtly, but as a shadow in every interaction, a pressure they cannot name yet cannot ignore. Machiavelli noted that men are more impressed by appearances than truth. This principle guides the fourth stage. Perception is the battlefield, and control of it is a weapon sharper than confrontation. Those who disrespect you are led to believe they still maneuver freely, unaware that every movement is subtly dictated by your strategy. Their miscalculation becomes inevitable because it is engineered. Their arrogance blinds them to the invisible restraints you have imposed. Leverage, once established, multiplies exponentially. What begins as subtle recalibration escalates into systemic advantage. A repeated pattern of calculated response shapes their expectations. Every attempt to provoke, to diminish, to assert dominance is absorbed, analyzed, and redirected. They are no longer architects of their actions, they are instruments in your design. By the conclusion of this stage, perception is no longer aligned with ego but with control. They underestimate you at their peril, misjudge you at every turn, and increasingly, they confront a reality they cannot manipulate. And within this invisible dominance lies the doorway to the next stage, the internal fracture of their identity, as their disrespect is transformed into self-exposure, and their assumptions become the scaffolding of your authority. By the fifth stage, the architecture of control is nearly complete. Those who once disrespected you begin to falter, not because of direct confrontation, but because the foundations of their identity have been subtly undermined. Arrogance, entitlement, and assumed superiority are fragile constructs, easily destabilized when their expected outcomes are denied. Each measured silence, each unreactive boundary, each recalibration of perception acts as an invisible chisel, carving fractures into the ego that believed itself invincible. Disrespect is rooted in projection. They project dominance onto others to mask their inadequacy. When your mind refuses to participate in this charade, when your emotional economy remains intact, the projection returns to its source. Their confidence, once taken for granted, becomes unstable. They begin to question their own judgment, their own intentions, their own worth. Internal chaos replaces their outward arrogance. They are forced to navigate a reality they cannot control, a reality where every insult, every provocation, is absorbed and transformed into evidence of their own weakness. Machiavellian strategy thrives in these moments. True power lies not in the physical assertion of dominance, but in the silent collapse of an opponent's assumptions. By orchestrating identity fracture, you convert disrespect into psychological submission without overt conflict. They may continue to speak, to act, to attempt manipulation, but each effort reinforces the truth they cannot see, that your composure, your boundaries, and your control render their aggression meaningless. This stage is delicate. One misstep, an overreaction, an indulgence of ego, can restore their sense of dominance. Precision, patience, and strategic silence remain your instruments. By allowing them to unravel internally, you maintain the high ground, occupying a position that is untouchable, unprovoked, and invisible. Their fractured identity becomes the mirror of your unassailable authority. By the conclusion of this stage, the disrespectful mind is caught in a web of its own making. Their assumptions are systematically dismantled, their arrogance redirected inward, their confidence destabilized. And in this destabilization lies the final stage, a transition from external dominance to the ultimate mastery, self-sovereignty. Where others once tested you, you now exist as the immovable axis upon which their perception, fear, and envy revolve. The final stage is not a battle with others, it is a confrontation with reality itself. Those who disrespect you have revealed their nature fragile, reactive, governed by envy, fear, and the insatiable need to assert dominance over what they do not understand. And yet, the haunting truth is that their behavior is merely a reflection of the human condition. People will always test limits, always seek advantage, always attempt to erode authority. Respect is never granted by default, it is always extracted, silently, strategically, and without the need for validation. By this stage, your mastery is complete, not through aggression, but through unyielding internal authority. Emotional economies, strategic boundaries, perception control, and the fracture of ego in others converge to form a singular principle: you are untouchable, not because others fear you physically, but because they cannot penetrate the architecture of your mind. Silence becomes louder than their shouts, composure outweighs their attacks, restraint transforms into dominance. You are a force defined not by reaction, but by internal sovereignty. The human psyche is a labyrinth of weakness. Those who attempted to undermine you have unknowingly illuminated their own fragility, revealing the predictable patterns that govern their interactions. This realization is disquieting. The majority of men operate from impulse rather than strategy, assumption rather than observation, and ego rather than reason. Those who seem powerful are often the most vulnerable. Those who demand respect are often the least deserving. And yet, in this dark clarity lies your ultimate advantage. Understanding is the precursor to control, and control is the precursor to freedom. Self-mastery is not comfort, it is dominance. It is the calm, cold recognition that external chaos cannot touch the ordered mind. It is the quiet, inexorable reshaping of the psychological landscape around you, ensuring that those who once sought to diminish you now navigate a reality defined by your authority. Your presence alone becomes a measure of value, your restraint a tool of influence, your mind a dominion beyond dispute. In the end, the lesson is immutable: respect is never given, only extracted. Human weakness is a constant, and emotional mastery is the rarest power. Those who do not respect you are, ultimately, instruments through which your authority is perfected. They expose their nature, and in doing so, reveal the truth you must internalize. Dominance is neither loud nor visible. It is the quiet, strategic occupation of mind, perception, and soul. And once it is claimed, nothing external can unsettle it.